Well, good afternoon, listeners. You're listening to Lament of Hope podcast, and I'm your host, Danielle Richardson. And I'm incredibly blessed over the time that I've had this podcast to speak to several actors and actresses from the 50s all the way up to current time. And Ruta's really unique. She's been in the film industry since the 1950s. And Ruta, if I'm right, I think you appeared in a television show this past year, right?
Yes, I believe so. I can never remember what I've done, but how lovely to be with you and your listeners, Danielle. Thank you for inviting me. I'm so pleased. And first of all, Danielle is one of the prettiest names on the face of this earth. I think that is so gorgeous. And I assume that you are divinely, gorgeously sexy.
I hope so. I definitely
And
don't
if you're
say
not, I'm
that.
making up.
But
It's
for
such a
listeners,
pleasure.
oh, I'm so glad you're here. And for listeners who don't know who Ruta Lee is, I mean, she's been in several films. I mean, she's been in, some iconic ones like um Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, but she's been in also several TV shows like I Love Lucy. She appeared in a few episodes. The Twilight Zone, which is a famous episode she's known for. And she also wrote a memoir in 2021. So I highly recommend if you want to know more about Ruta that you look into that memoir. But Ruta,
Oh, yes, please. It's a fun read. It's a very easy read. Most people read it in one sitting, maybe two. And I talk about everybody that I've ever met or known in Hollywood that has some kind of fame attached to them. And I don't have anything nasty to say about anybody. Every once in a while, I'll poke a little fun at someone because God bless, most people in show business have a wild sense of humor and can take a joke. But I love my memoir because it really goes from the beginning of my absolute walking on the face of this earth, and as my mother would put it, dancing on the face of this earth to today. And here I am going into my 90th year, May 30th, I'll be 90, and I'm still full of piss and vinegar and carrying on like I'm a youngster and refuse to recognize the fact that I'm getting older. Well, I'm getting older, but I'm getting better, like good wine.
well, isn't because it's called Consider Your Ass Kicked, right?
Not kicked, kissed.
Kissed, thank you. Yes. Um,
Yes, it's an
I have
expression
to
that I
admit,
use.
when I saw that title, I was like, that is such a salty vinegar title for sure.
Well, my very dear friend, George Pinocchio, who is the red carpet man for ABC television, is just a darling friend, and he and his wife, she did a lot of my outfits for me. Uh, for years, they followed me and the Thalians, which we'll talk about a little later, the charity group that Debbie Reynolds and I were the mother superiors of. Um, how else do you say thank you to somebody for $50 that they've given to the Thalians, or $500, or 5,000, or 50,000, whatever? From stage, I would say, please, dear ones, consider your back kiss. And I meant it from the bottom of my heart, and I still do. I'm so grateful to anybody that makes an effort to be kind charitably and to help someone who can't help themselves charitably. And that's what the Thalians does. We are Hollywood for mental health. And so that's where the title came from. And George Pinocchio said, if you ever get this book finished, which took me forever to write, I I promised George that I would call it "Consider Your Ass Kissed," and I beat it. And I'll tell you something, Danielle. I think the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life, and Lord knows I called Khrushchev and I traveled to the Soviet Union and I did all kinds of hardworking things. I don't think anything was ever as difficult as writing a book. I have such admiration for anybody who can sit down and type away and nice. But I didn't type. I recorded the book, and somebody else transcribed it, and then editing a book and deciding what to throw out is impossible. I don't know, Danielle. Have you ever written a book? But I find it very tough.
No, to be honest, that's part why I find it hard too. It's hard to focus. You have to have inspiration for quite a while, and it's quick for the passion to die out, honestly.
Well, I find don't you talk beautifully with so your listeners can hear and know what's going on and see you. I love to talk, as you can tell, and I have stories to tell. And it was my friends who would say, you know, you have such great stories to tell about the people that you know and where you've been and who you've met and who you worked with, that you should share them with everybody. And I thought, yeah, that's fine. But boy, oh boy, to sit down and decide what story to tell and what not to tell was very difficult, as you can imagine.
Was it simply because of having to sit and think, or was it more of you were trying to decide what stories would be most honoring to people, or you were worried that you would say something that would offend them, or
I never worried about saying something that would offend for the simple reason that I'm a nice lady, a good human being, and I appreciate everybody. And I understand that we all have problems and we all have baggage that we carry. And sometimes that baggage is a pain in the rear end, and sometimes it's not. But I shared very honestly the stories from my life that I thought would be of interest. But it's very difficult to decide what you think is going to be of interest to somebody. I have a wild sense of humor, and I tried to bring that to my books and put them all in a frame with great humor and being able to laugh at myself and to laugh at the people that have filled my life. I think that's one of the greatest things in the world that God gave us is the idea of being able to laugh at almost everything.
when do you think has been a time in your life when it's been hardest to laugh? Like it was really hard that you struggled to find a um a happy side to it.
I think when I gave short shrift, meaning just one chapter in my book, to my grandmother, and I found it difficult to laugh until I got there in trying to get my grandmother out of Siberia, of knowing that all of her family had been deported to Siberia. They had to find each other in that God forbidden snow-ridden place that prisoners were sent to, and nobody ever knew why. I presume it was all because the Soviet authorities at the time, the communist authorities, were trying to repatriate all those little countries like Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Poland, Czechoslovakia with communists. And so they took these little people who were not the intelligentsia, not the educated, but plain little farm people considered wealthy, had a cow that gave them milk, and shipped all these people off to Siberia and disposed of whatever they had, you know, handmade linens or towels or whatever they had. That part of my life was not funny. When I finally, after I placed the call to Khrushchev, which garnered international headlines and got permission to go to Lithuania, and this was, back in the early 60s when nobody was permitted to travel to any of those countries that were communist controlled unless you were a very highfalutin member in the Communist Party. Would you be permitted permission to go to the Soviet Union, any of those countries? And I got permission. And once I got there, I found that even those people that were living under communist rule found times and places to laugh. And I think it saved a lot of lives and a lot of future for people to be able to kind of laugh at how stupid things could be under different systems. We are so blessed in America. We don't know how blessed we are until we go other places and see how other forms of government treat their people. Then we realize how blessed we are here.
So when you went to Lithuania, you were going to do like shows for the people there kind
No,
of thing?
hell no. No, 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 nothing of that sort. I just got permission from Khrushchev and the Kremlin, and when they told me to reinstate myself to the Russian embassy in Washington, which I had spoken to so many times with "niet, niet, niet," I went simply to see if my grandmother, who was permitted to go back to Lithuania after 15 years in Siberia. I don't know if I didn't know if she was alive or dead because it took so long for a letter to get to us from communist Russia, and I got permission to go, and it was unbelievable. And I was given permission for myself to go and to take my parents. And the State Department had said to me, "Don't take your parents because they, having been born and raised in Lithuania, could be detained as primary citizens of the Soviet." And I thought, God is not going to be so cruel as to do that. And they haven't seen their family in 35 years. And so I took them. And thank God, everybody treated us like we were British royalty. It was quite miraculous and quite wonderful. And so
Wow.
I was very, very grateful to all those authorities.
So was that your first time seeing your grandmother?
Yes,
What was that
yes.
like seeing her for the first
And
time?
she was in a hospital room when I saw her for the first time, and you can imagine hospital in those days back. They didn't even have aspirin. That's how well equipped they were. And there she sat in this bed that she had been miraculously moved from the Baltic Sea, where she lived in Lithuania, in a little tin roofed thatched hut. And she had been miraculously moved by big fancy ambulance, I guess when they knew the Americans were coming. And we found her in this hospital in Kaunas, sitting in a little bed, and her toothless smile grinning. The entire staff had gathered, and all the doctors and the nurses and all of us who had come in, my mother and father and myself, and our drivers and the people traveling with us, were all in a spate of tears. And she just sat there beaming that toothless smile, saying, "Why should I cry? This is the happiest day of my life." And then 6 months later, I was permitted to go back, this time by myself, and pick up my grandmother in Lithuania, go back through Moscow, get the exit visa all stamped and sealed and delivered, and get on a plane to London with my grandmother, which was an exceptional experience. And most of that, by the time we were on a plane and going, was worthy of not just smiles, but laughter. But until then, there was nothing to smile about. It was all very tense.
Well, I was gonna say, you must have will of iron. Like, you must be very persistent.
Either that or very young and very stupid, not to worry about things. Uh, I, I, I am a person that once I decide to do something, I'll do it come hell or high water. And this kind of was my guardian angels watching over me and helping me through all of this. I was highly regarded in Lithuania and by the Soviet authorities that were running Lithuania at the time because I was the only girl in Hollywood that talked of being of Lithuanian descent. Well, with a name like Ruta, Ruta, which is a very beloved Lithuanian name, I'd have to explain what that was all the time, and I kept it. And I have to tell you, Danielle, well, you have a pretty name, and I'm sure that you had to learn to spell it, and also, as did your friends. I grew up, everybody thinking that it was a clerical error in the typing or the whatever, and that it had to be either Ruth or Rita or Rhoda or Rhonda or something. But mostly it became Ruth. And I finally, in high school, when I went to Hollywood High, I said to my homeroom teacher, you know, it's time that I straighten this out. My name is Ruta, which is a very fragrant flowering herb, and it's the national symbol of Lithuania, much like the rose is to England or the maple leaf is to Canada. The sprig of Ruta is used in medicines. It's used in love potions. Brides wear garlands of it in their hair. It's sung about in every song. It's kind of wonderful. And so my homeroom teacher changed my name back to Ruta, and thank God I kept it from then on. But I always had to explain it in the process of growing up, that it was a Lithuanian name.
Because your parents were Lithuanian, but you were born in the US?
In Canada, in Montreal.
In Canada. Okay.
Uh-huh. My parents, of course, wanted to come to the United States, but in 29, excuse my coughing, when the quotas were closed into the United States, and the closest to the United States, where everybody knew the streets were paved with gold, was either Canada or Mexico or South America. And they chose Canada because that was the closest. And my father got a job that he had to sign up for a year for, working in the wheat fields of Saskatchewan in Canada. And he worked there for a year, saved the money, and then brought my mother over. And there was a small but thriving Lithuanian community in Montreal. And so that made it a little easier for them. And I was born there some years later. And of course, Lithuanian was my first language. I learned English by playing in the street with the kids. I guess the way most foreign-born people. But Canada was very, very good to my family and to anybody that came there. It was great. But my mother, even though she was furthest thing from a showbiz mother, my mother always had in mind to follow what not my homeroom, but my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Jackson, gave my mother advice. Said, your child is a little different than the rest of the kids that are in my classes in kindergarten. She's a little more vibrant, has a little more pizzazz. Give her singing lessons or dancing lessons or music lessons of some kind, whatever you can afford, Mary, do for her. And my mother, Mary was her name, followed Mrs. Jackson's advice and did give me dance lessons, etc. And they always wanted to move out of the cold, cold climate of Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and the snow up to your nose every winter and come to a warmer climate. Well, Hollywood, Florida was closer to Montreal, and was, I think, what my father had in mind. But my mother knew nothing about theater in New York, which would have been the closest place to go. But she knew about movies and Hollywood, and therefore got us here. And it's miraculous how they got permission to come to California. But I'm so grateful that she listened to Mrs. Jackson, to whom I owe my entire career, and to my mom, who made sure that she followed through.
Wow. Is there something about the United States now compared to when you were younger that you wish was the same? Like, how has the United States changed to you in the time you've been here since, you were young?
Danielle, I can't comment on the whole United States. Everything has changed. I think that we have, as a nation, we're still the most generous people on the face of this earth as a nation, but we have forgotten politeness. Our children are not taught to say thank you anymore, or yes, sir, or no, sir. I feel that is totally missing. I feel it very, very much here in Hollywood, where I did all of my growing up. I feel that so many of the young people anymore have no consideration about everybody else in the business. I sort of feel that politeness and that self-discipline that we all had, starting with working in vaudeville and all the way through, and in the movie industry, the discipline of showing up on time, showing up knowing your lines, showing up knowing your material, not carrying all kinds of emotional baggage with you that somebody had to kind of cater to. And kids are getting away with all of that crap now, which, now I'm generalizing terribly, Danielle, but I've certainly that that politeness and caring for someone else and helping someone else isn't as prevalent as it used to be.
So you just mean, in a sense, like just more common decency toward others people in general.
Yeah, yes, I think that nationally has become kind of something that we're so used to having everything our way so fast, at the push of a button or the one phone call, and our problems are solved, or at least we've spared nothing and we've told somebody else of our problems. But just plain politeness is non-existent. Hell, look at the way we drive anymore. Everybody is quick to lean on the horn and not kind of say after you, or when you're in a mob of people on a street, is there, oh, here, you step in front of me, that's fine, or go through the door before me, or let me hold it open for you. That's gone.
Hmm.
Generally, it's gone. And it upsets me because I think we are good people, Americans. Like I said, the most generous people on the face of this earth. We are the ones that, if there's a story to tell and it's told properly through the press or whatever, we are the first people to cough up the dollars or the energy or the caring to care for other people. I'm very proud of that. Now, if we could just be a little more polite with each other, it would be very nice.
When was there a gesture that you remember that someone did for you that really made an impression on you as a person?
My whole life, I've had gestures made. There were people whose names I maybe didn't even know or have forgotten. And the only way that I can pay back the gesture is to pay it forward, if not back. Just do a kindness for somebody else. And maybe that's why I'm so very involved and can't get past being very involved with the Thalians, which is the group that I was talking about earlier. Debbie Reynolds was one of our founding members, and Mariska Hargitay's lovely mother was one of our founding members. And this all came about because a group of young Hollywood actors, singers, dancers, producers, writers, agents got tired of being called pot smoking, hard drinking asses that had nothing to contribute to society, and said, you know, we get together and we hang around the piano and sing and have drinks together and whatnot. Why don't we put a show together and sell some tickets and raise money for a good charity? Well, they send out Jane Mansfield, who is Mariska Hargitay's mother, and what the heck is her name? The pretty blonde, Mamie Van Doren. Two of the largest breasted ladies in the world, I think. We sent them out to look for a charity. And they came back saying, well, all the good diseases have been taken. And they discovered a man that a wonderful doctor that dealt with emotionally disturbed children. And he described these children as apples in a barrel that had started to rot. And they could infect the entire barrel of apples if they weren't taken care of. And he had started a clinic, and that's how we founded the Thalians. And we dealt with emotionally disturbed children. And then 18 years later, we built the Thalians Community Mental Health Center, the first building to go in at the big Cedars-Sinai complex here in Los Angeles. And we went not just emotionally disturbed children, but from pediatric all the way through to geriatric care. And we had inpatient and out services, and it was very, very exciting to do this. Then many years later, almost 50 years later, we decided to refocus our attention to the plight of the returning veterans. These beautiful young people that put their lives on the line anywhere, any hellhole in the world we send them to, for us, for America. And yet sometimes they come home and fall through the cracks when it comes to their mental health and what's happened to them.
Yeah.
And so we joined up with UCLA's Operation Mend. OpMend heals the broken and fractured bodies of our returning young men and women, our veterans, and we Thalians take care of the broken mind and spirit of these returning people. And I'm very, very proud of the fact that we are now going into our 70th year of worrying about mental health, people who can't do it for themselves. Us dumb actors for doing this. Think of the millions of dollars that we've raised. And so I'm very, very, very grateful. And if any of your listeners are of a mind to help in Debbie's memory and in my living memory, please contact us by going to the Thalians, THALAN.org, and looking it up and helping us by sending us whatever you can spare. And all I can say is from the bottom of my heart, consider your darling asses kissed if you do.
Did you ever, or have you, or still now struggle with something mentally, like anxiety or depression or anything like that?
Thank you, God, no. I've never had depression. I love laughter too much to ever be depressed. I haven't struggled. I recently had a stroke, And that was interesting because I've never been sick in my life. I just don't get colds very often. I don't suffer things. And that was interesting to have to kind of repair all of that. And thank God, I seem to be okay. I'm talking and I'm walking and I'm laughing and I'm dancing. And so thank you, God, for the help along the way. But that's the closest I've ever come to anything serious that health-wise. I've been very, very blessed. And
Wow.
I pray everybody is as blessed as I am.
I was gonna say, you do not sound like you've ever had any kind of stroke.
Well, thank God. My girlfriend, my family discovered that I hadn't come home when I was supposed to be. I was driving in from Palm Springs, and my girlfriend came to the house and found me on the floor, and everything sort of disappeared. I had no idea that this had happened, but obviously one can survive, if you're caught in time. And I was lucky enough to be taken to a hospital and the process done very quickly. And it just takes people around you being aware that you're not where you're supposed to be, or not sounding the way you should. And there are all kinds of little signals, I guess, that you get for stroke. I didn't pay much attention to them because it never occurred to me until I had a stroke that there are signs you can watch for. And I'll be watching for them from now on.
I wanted to ask you, I mean, and if you're comfortable answering, but you know, it's sad, but also it's inevitable, right? So many actors from your period have died. Like you mentioned, Debbie Reynolds, and there are so many. I mean, Christopher Plummer, so many greats that passed away that, even now I wish were alive. I'd love to talk and connect with them. Is, death or passing away something you worry about or are afraid of since you're about to turn
No,
90?
I'm not afraid of it, but I'm just not ready to go. I still feel like I have too much to do, and I sort of feel like God means for me to do a lot more yet before I go. But I don't regret. I mean, I regret that people have passed, but rather than focus on the sadness of their going, I of those so many people that I was blessed to know and share time with and drinks with and work with and laugh with and scratch with. And so I don't regret. I just thank God for the privilege of having known them, and for giving me the opportunity to know so many wonderful people.
Yeah, no, you definitely have. You've mentioned God several times. Do you subscribe to any sort of religion, or do you have a personal relationship with God, or
Yeah,
how do you?
yeah. I'm about as Catholic as you can get. Sometimes I'm not a very good Catholic member because I now during COVID especially, I have not gone to mass all the time, but I always found it to be a good thing to do. I don't know why, but it was almost like going and seeing a great musical comedy, to go to the theater of God and sit down and have a small one-on-one chat with Almighty, where you sort of feel captive, like being in the theater. And I like that a lot. And I kind of miss it when I don't do it. And my girlfriend, who is Alex Trebek's daughter, I was with yesterday at Peter Marshall's beautiful funeral service, a memorial service, I should say. And she said, we used to go to church together a lot. I'm going to come by and pick you up and let's do that again. And I kind of like that idea of now, obviously, she's a hell of a lot younger than I am. And maybe it takes the young to lead the old back to church again and to get me into the routine of going. But I do communicate with the Almighty all the time, and I try to remember not to just do it when I need something, but do it in order to say thanks. And Lord knows I'm saying thanks now for guiding me through my stroke and making me whole and sound again so that I can sit with you. And actually, I'm going to have to go, but I thank you so very, very much, Danielle, for sharing your audience with me and giving me the opportunity of saying Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy whatever. Just enjoy this fabulous holiday season that we have. Remember that there is a power stronger than you. Thank it for the good things that have come your way, including the turkey on Thanksgiving. And Danielle, how very, very nice to know you. I look forward to meeting you in person, my darling.
Oh, I'd love that. I hope so too. Thank you so much for your time.
I'm happy that you shared your time with me. And like I said, a very, very happy holiday season to everybody. God bless. And not just God bless each and every one of you, but God bless America, even though sometimes I wonder if we deserve it.
I think we all
Blessings on
wonder that. Very true. All right. Bye, Ruda.